first of all, I'd like a little bit about me. 15 years ago, exactly 15 years ago, I was flooded to about this deep, and I will show you some photographs, this deep, with raw sewage. I had no idea that I was at risk of flooding. I had other people's toilet paper floating in my home. And I know it was other people's because I don't use blue toilet paper. So it was from that moment I truly believe that my life completely changed, and it turned my life upside down. And I was absolutely determined, because I didn't know my own flood risk. I had no idea that I was at risk of flooding, and I had no river, no sea, no stream. Nothing to make me think, oh, there's some water there, might it get into my home? All right, okay. Okay, so I had no idea that floodwater would get into my home at all. So then I became a passionate advocate for raising awareness of all forms of flooding, but especially surface water flood risk. And that's how I've come to work for the Know Your Flood Risk campaign, because when I bought the house, the person that sold it to me didn't tell me that my house was at risk of flooding, that it had been flooded before. And we're not legally bound to do so. And I always encourage people, when they are buying a house, to think about whether it's at risk of flooding, because only 20% of people that are buying houses nationally, this is a result of a YouGov poll earlier this year, have actually looked into their flood risk when buying the property. So it's not on people's agendas, and it's something that I really think we all ought to be thinking about, because surface water flooding in 2007, when 57,000 properties were flooded, surface water flooding equated for 2/3 of the insurance claims. And in 2012, when many of you, I guess, flooded, half of insurance claims was from surface water flooding. So really, everybody, even so many people say to me, oh, I live on a hill, I'm not at risk of flooding. Wrong. Because I've met people who live on a hill and have been very badly flooded by the floodwater coming down the side of the hill and going through their front door and out of the back door, annihilating their homes on the way. So it's something that I want you aware. If you don't take anything else away from what I say today, take that away with you. I'm going to talk really about what it's like to flood. Have any of you here been flooded? So I apologise to you because it can bring back memories, but I want to share with you the experience of what it's like to flood, not just from my perspective, but since I first flooded, it was in sort of the 1990s, I've talked to thousands of people. I've been in thousands of flooded homes, and so I know just how awful it is, and I want to share that with you. So if you're on the verge of thinking about, shall I prepare for being flooded, this just might make you do so. So, thank you. We're going to have to sort of do a lot of photographs, and I'm going to say yes please a lot, so bear with us. So, this is my street on a normal day. Can you all see these photographs? Is it dark enough in here for you? Could we perhaps have some lights on? That's better, isn't it? So, this is my house on a normal day, and thank you. And this is it just after a few hours of rain, and then the next one, this was it. This was my street, and we had swans swimming on the water for many weeks. In the year 2000, the great floods of 2000, the floods came twice, and so for basically 3 weeks, I looked after Severn Trent Water's sewage in my home. So if we can go on to the next picture, this is just a few photographs of the various floods I've had. And that's Eric from Severn Trent Water sweeping the poo up outside my home. When the flood water went, I had the same in my home, and I also was told by the electrician that it's the first time he'd ever seen dried poo inside a plug socket. So these are, as I've said, are photographs that have been given to me. So to us, to you, we're just a newspaper column, just a television a news item. But to us, we've lost our lives as we knew them. Next one, please. This is the view of one small village in Gloucestershire in 2007. The whole village was flooded. The pub was flooded, the church was flooded, the shop was flooded. So the whole community really was taken by storm. They weren't prepared for it. They were annihilated, and it devastated them. And of course, these are the flood waters inside people's homes. The one with the fireplace at the bottom, they had been married for 3 weeks, so they'd only just got home from their honeymoon when this happened. I want you to remember that fireplace, because I will refer to it again in a bit. And of course, the aftermath. It's not just the settees, the white goods. It's our stuff. Our memories are washed away. I lost my children's playgroup pictures, I lost little handprints, I lost photographs, things that you can't put an insurance price tag on. My memory's gone. So many people's memories gone. And they are the things actually that hits people far more, is the loss of memories, that far more than having their settee washed away. And can you imagine what it's like to be forced out of your house like this with nothing but your baby's changing bag? And whenever I go onto the television and I talk to myself hoarse on the TV between the 13-14 floods, if a flood is imminent, I will say to people, please pack, where's your grab bag? Where's your medication? Where are you going to put your car? Where are you going to put Hammy the hamster and your mother who's on a Zimmer frame? All these things need to be planned in advance. Again, here, these were just sort of normal homes the night before. Again, can I ask you to remember the picture of the kitchen? I make no apologies for the tackiness of this. This was Christmas Eve in Tunbridge in Kent. Baby's first Christmas. Grandma and Grandad both staying, both sets. The whole of Christmas and all the Christmas presents that were wrapped up. Can you imagine how excited we all get for Christmas, particularly baby's first Christmas, completely annihilated like this? And also, flooding even comes on your birthday, and this had been hung up in one woman's kitchen. Happy birthday, Mum. 2 years running she was flooded on her birthday. She began to think God was picking on her a bit, really. And this one is a particularly bad example, and it's one that I always get very emotional about this one. Again, I gave up my Christmas to help people in Tunbridge, but it's people's stuff, you know, all the things we've saved up for, everything that we hold dear, put into plastic bags. Now, the lady that owned the plastic bags, her name was Dolly, and she was in her late 80s, and she was flooded. She was so upset by it all. That was her last view when she was admitted to hospital. And sadly, Dolly died on New Year's Eve. So that was her last memory of her home. And her poor relatives not only had to grieve with their mother's death, but they had to clear up all the remnants of her home. And I find that emphasising that kind of thing, we've all got stuff going on, and having to deal with that and death at the same time is just horrific. And again, these are familiar scenes. We all see them. How would you feel if it was the contents of your home in that skip? That photograph was given to me kindly by the Environment Agency. I went up to Boston as soon as the tidal surge had happened. And it was in a very sort of deprived area. People from Eastern Europe were living there. They had no idea about flood warnings. They didn't speak the English. And the whole thing initially was just devastation and confusion as to how to reach out and help these people. And another thing, how would you like living in here? Up here? Not up here, sorry. I said that because somebody said to me, what, up there? For 2 years, after the 2007 floods, when all these 59,000 homes were flooded, so many people lived in caravans for 2 years. I went to breakfast with somebody, it was -5, and she'd been living, and she got bubble wrap up to her windows. People don't think about the far-reaching things that happen to you as a family when you're flooded. And when the minister and the media have gone, And there is a lot of excitement around a flood event. We all come together, we're wonderful, and we all band together. But when the harsh reality of it all kicks in, and that high that we all experience then becomes a huge low, and you have to manage, you look on as your home that you're no longer living in becomes a building site. And that's deeply traumatic for a lot of people. And also after the flood comes the old shock with a cowboy hat on. It's amazing how they descend onto communities, the white van man, and say, we'll have you back in your home, love, you know, just pay us cash, no VAT, we'll do it. And you have to deal with that as well. And there's so much going on in your life that you're having to deal with the old shock. And also, we've all got stuff going on in our lives. A spouse death or divorce, and injury and illness and redundancy, money problems and retirement. And somebody said to me once, I'm a wife, can you put my wife on that? I haven't. But we've all got stuff going on. Each one of you is probably preoccupied with a problem. When you've finished here today, you can go to your home, your sanctuary, you can shut the door, put television on, pour a glass of wine or beer, and you're safe. When you've been flooded, you lose your comfort blanket. So if we move on to the next one, these are just a few of the things you have to deal with. As I've said, your home becomes a building site, and you've nowhere else to live for at least 9 months. Some people are out for longer. And then the media often stand and say, Mr. Smith's house is going to take several weeks to dry. Wrong. We're out for a long time. And where are the builders today? What happened in Somerset was that many insurance companies just used one building company, and they sailed from one house to another, and people are left in disarray. They go out of their way to be there to talk to the builders, and the builders don't show. And I could do a whole presentation on managing a building site that used to be your home, and that gives you terrible stress, and you do argue with your husband or your wife, and then that upsets the children. You've got to remember the children have lost their toys. My autistic son, newly diagnosed autistic son, lost every single toy 3 weeks after we had diagnosis, and we were reeling from that. He lost every toy he owned. He had severe learning difficulties. He didn't understand what was going on, so that compounded our confusion. And you have extra financial worries. And what is a loss adjuster? Most of us don't know what one is. And where is he today? He said he was going to come and he hasn't. And then what on earth is resilient repair? Well, I'll tell you a bit about resilient repair in a minute. I've actually written, along with a much cleverer friend of mine who's an academic, a guide to flood recovery, which is a free download. It's on the Know Your Flood Risk website, knowyourfloodrisk.co.uk website. We researched all the guides that were available and added my own hints and tips from my own experience. And I know the people that have received it in the 13-14 floods did say it was invaluable, because the main thing, it told them that no, they were not going mad. And as we know, during the last decade or so, flooding has been on the increase. So how can we, as individuals, become more resilient to flooding? This was obviously a fine example that Noah was the first person to become flood resilient. But why he actually had to save wasps, I'm going to have words with him if I get it. But, you know, maybe that's a bit of an over-egged example. Now, if you're at risk of flooding and you qualify for a river flood warning from the Environment Agency, it's free. It's absolutely a no-brainer not to sign up for a free flood warning. It gives you time to move your stuff, get rid of your mum on a Zimmer frame to somebody else, move your car, and to not sign up to a free Environment Agency flood warning. I can't fathom why people don't do it. Next one. If you're at risk of flash flooding or flooding from streams where you don't qualify for a warning, there are a lot of telemetry systems. There's one downstairs. I do encourage you to go and visit the stand there, that will actually give you warning to your own home. As a community, it will dial up set numbers of people and tell you that you've got flooded. And I know you might be thinking of expense, but as communities, we can raise our own funds by having village fetes, cake morning, goodness knows what. There's a great community in Northampton where I worked last year that literally just have all these amazing events and just buy whatever they need as a community by laying on the events. These are well worth having if you can't get a flood warning. I know you're a rural community, but I put this in because it's really important to me. So many people have paved over their drives. We've concreted over our entire world and tarmacked everywhere. So when the rain comes down, there's nowhere for it to go. So if you're thinking about redoing your drive, think about permeable paving. Thank you. And the next one, I live in a small urban box, really, and I've got my own water butt. If we all did a little bit of a lot of stuff, if we all made a difference, notice I haven't got hard paving, we could actually reduce our own flood risk. And I'm quite passionate about this. I have my own emergency flood plan, and that's, I'll ask my partner who's good at drawing to do that. We can go on to the next one. I'd much rather plan in advance than deal with it while it's happening. Can we go on to the next one as well? I've got one of these on my own website, and it's a download. It just literally complements everything everybody said, but it covers all emergencies, not just flooding. Because I know a lot of people don't like the F word. But let me just tell you my story, that I had my own flood plan, and I'd taken on the water company, just so you know, and I beat them. I'm one of the only people in the country to beat a water company. I was so proud of myself, but they had to put in a £2 million pumping station, which they asked me to open. I'm very glad to do that, but I declined their kind offer to name a sewage pumping station after me. But I always say this as well: if you have a flood alleviation scheme, a flood defence, it reduces your risk, it doesn't take it away. So you've always got to stay planned and prepared. I had written with my family, it sounds a bit anarchish, but I did it, a family flood plan. We got a flood warning in 2007, and I wasn't in. I had difficulty in getting home, and my teenage boys found the flood plan. They knew where it was, they activated it. They knew where the plastic boxes were to put all the kitchen equipment in, and by the time I'd got home, they had taken everything upstairs. Even my doors, downstairs doors, were upstairs. So it was just great to know that my flood plan that we all get nagged to do, actually I can say, let's do them because they work. And I feel as well, while we're on this, because I know other people are talking about it, that and we've already heard, if you're prepared in your own home, then you can get out and help in the community. And so many communities are isolated. We've had huge government cuts. Local authorities often, you think floods and water department, actually it's 1 or 2 people sometimes. In Northampton there is 2 people working for the whole of rural Northamptonshire. The Fire and Rescue Service and the police, they've all been pared down. They can't be everywhere. So we, as a communities, have to work together to actually manage the event as it's happening. And also, I always think, if you've got one point of contact from the community, a flood warden, a community volunteer, to speak to the emergency services on behalf of the community, it cuts down their workload as well. So always, when you're planning, always make sure you've got somebody designated to be the person that talks to those that are managing your flood risk. What's this? Oh yes, sorry, let's move on from that one because I've just said that. I'm not going to be very popular for saying this with a lot of people, but banning sandbags is an excellent example of them not working. They're high maintenance, they are environmentally unfriendly, because the minute they've been flooded, they get all sorts of bugs and stuff. Unless you've got large volumes of them and plastic sheeting behind them, they're not very effective at all. So I'm just going to talk you through some of the other products that you can use. Somerset, when it was happening, they were calling for 2 things: for the rivers to be dredged and for sandbags. I was there last week. They never want to see a sandbag again as long as they live. This was one of the many piles. They were rank. They smelt like rotting fish, and people were gagging walking past them. As we know, flood water is an evil thing when it's in a flood situation. It will find the weakest point of entry. And those are some of the ones that you should be thinking about. I've chose this photograph because I rather like it. I'm not a surveyor, but it's always, you must get a survey done of your property if you're thinking about protecting it, because somebody with the expertise will be able to tell you where all the water's coming from and what would be the best method of protection. This guy that I was speaking to, I'd actually worked out his flood level. It was there. And he actually is one of the drainage engineers for Northamptonshire County Council, and he hadn't protected his own business. He did after I'd finished talking to him. And these are just a few examples that we can go through of kite mark flood protection products working in anger. So we can see that they're working. They're not an answer to the Maiden's Prayer. In some low-level floods and floods that don't look about, they will keep the flood water out. If flood water stays, it's very deep. It's best to actually let it in. But also, if it lurks around for a few days, it could get into your property. But it's so much better than a sandbag. And here's an excellent example of Flood Arc. I think they're here today, keeping a property dry in Morpeth. Now, Morpeth was very badly flooded twice. After the first flood, some residents installed Flood Arc. Then they were flooded again, and all the neighbours who hadn't put them in went straight to this house and said, look, you're still dry. This photograph doesn't show, but in front of it, in front of the board, is a pair of red shoes, perfectly dry on the other side. And here's flood guards, and they're here today as well, downstairs with Aquabex on the Thames in 2007. And this is there's an example of one of these. It's quite heavy, floodgate, but you can see that it is working. So if you're fit and strong, this is got a kite mark, and it's a useful way to protect your property. And this one, Flood Defender, they'd actually just fitted this, and the people had just been flooded. It was agricultural runoff, and look at the colour. Everybody thinks flooding's clean. It's flipping not. You know that from around here when your roads get flooded. This was agricultural runoff, and it's filthy. And there's a tidal, a coast in Wales in 2014. This property didn't flood from having a flood protection product fitted on it. And some residents in Worcester. In Worcester we flood sometimes 2-3 times a year. We just know we're going to flood. But because there are not very many properties, clusters of properties, we don't really stack up cost beneficially. So one of the areas clubbed together, and they got themselves some flood protection products, and you can see the swans outside their homes, but they didn't flood. Now, the insurance industry much prefer passive flood protection products. So they're normal doors, and there's all sorts of wood composite ones about now that just look like normal doors, but the minute you lock them, so if you're at work, you're on holiday, it's in place, acting all the time. And I always say to people, if you're thinking about getting a new front door, think about getting a flood door at the same time. It's not highlighting your home at risk of flooding, but it's giving you that peace of mind that you've got permanent flood protection in place. And this is, I hate this photograph, but I show it anyway because I think it's quite scary, that this was one of them holding flood water back, and you can see how high it was, but the people had taken the door key out and it was coming through the door. Now, I wouldn't ever advise people to protect to that height, because it can compromise the structural integrity of your home. So bear your mind about that kind of thing. 5,000 litres of water an hour can get into homes by air bricks alone. And by simply, you can get these strappers, a bit like an elastoplast from Amazon for a few quid. And again, we've got examples downstairs of air brick covers. So just think about that. They don't cost a lot of money. And self-closing air bricks as well. So when you've got your passive front door, your normal looking front door, and self-closing air bricks, the minute the flood water hits them, they shut. That will give you peace of mind that you've sort of protected the two most vulnerable entries. And also remember a pump system. Your surveyor will tell you this, because often a household protection is only as good as its pump, because often water comes from underneath. And there are a different array of products that you can use. a lot of them are downstairs, the pan seal, the anti-backflow valves, toilet bungs, all this kind of thing that you can, because water will have its wicked way with you, and all these things can stop it getting in. And this is quite an expensive item, but if you're at regular risk of flooding, you can see it's a self-rising barrier that people like to keep the water away from their home. So a self-rising barrier that will be activated by the flood, and you can see it up there. And another very simple solution which actually saved that bungalow from flooding, they did ring me and said, what can I use? Not very much money, and the Environment Agency and Emergency Services do use this quite a lot. And Rapid Dam, this is it. Go outside and have a look at it, because having these in your community, when you've got your community plan, you know which areas are going to flood first. If you've saved up and got one of these, you can deploy them as a community straight to where you need it most. And this is another fine example of something that looks very simple. And this house, 2 houses were saved by a water gate that just uses the water and stand out. So where are you going to get information? We've already heard about your excellent website, but my own website, born from my own experiences, and if you look under how to protect a property, it's marydhonau.co.uk. Next one, please. And the National Flood Forum have blue pages. My only caveat to that, because it actually was my brainchild, I used to work for the National Flood Forum, but the only caveat is there's no quality control. So if you pay your money, you can advertise in there. So it might be somebody who's knocked something up in a shed and trying to sell it. So just be aware of that. When always look for a kite mark. The Homeowner's Guide to Flood Resilience, which is a free download, but it's also, I've got some hard copies at the back. So do help yourself. There's some under the table if they disappear. Do help yourself. I've been told by a DEFRA official that they're one of the best, it's one of the best guides there is in the country at the moment. And also, I have to have a plug for the Property Care Association Flood Protection Group, because one thing that I've been very keen to sort of put an end to is the concept of the white van man rolling up again and saying he'll protect your property. To actually become a member of the Property Care Association Flood Protection Group, it's a very stringent application process, and I know they turn away as many people as they let it into membership. You know that they're financially viable, they're trusted, they've got the skills to deliver, and also it's backed by the government trust mark. So again, there's a few leaflets of the Property Care Association here, and I'll just do a bit of a whiz through flood resilience. How do we actually make our homes resilient to flooding? So when the flood water does come in, it doesn't do its worst. And I've mentioned the pump. Now this property here, he got his fridge up on a plinth, taking the kickboards off, and he'd also worked out that with a pump, how deep the flood water would get if it got in. He was a bit of a clever mathematician. And he didn't make an insurance claim, and it was pumping out here. He said it wasn't a picnic, and I will always say that because I did the same. I made my home flood resilient when all my kids are taking everything upstairs. I did flood, but because I put in cement-type plaster, I'd got skirting boards with 17 layers of yacht varnish, my plugs were up the walls, and everything possible was up the walls. I didn't have to make an insurance claim. We lived upstairs for about 3 weeks while we sanitised it and dried it out, and moved back down again, much better than the 9 months that we were displaced before. Now, this flooded hall, do you remember I told you about to remember the fireplace? The guy, that family had a horrendous time when they were displaced for a year in awful accommodation, and they were flooded again, and the big homeowner, burly guy, was physically sick when he was flooded a second time, and he thought, this is not going to happen to me. So this is his flooded hall when it came in the second time, and he decided he was going to, did it all himself. He raised his floor. I couldn't shift the dog when I took the photograph, but he's actually sort of, as you can see, he's lifted his own floor up so the floodwater won't get in, hopefully, that high, and also he's paved over so it can be swilled out. And do you remember the kitchen? Now that was a marine ply kitchen. It was washed down and dried out, sanitised, and carried on using it. So if you're thinking of changing a kitchen, it might be worth thinking, shall I invest a bit more money and get a flood resilient kitchen. This is just, I'm going to finish with an excellent example of property flood resilience. So this is Ucking Hall in Worcestershire, and the lady I know was rescued by a helicopter drinking champagne, and decided it was her second flood, she wasn't going to go through it again. So this is just an overview of some of the things she's done, and you'll have, if you just stay with your finger, that was her home for 2 years. So whilst this was being done, because what a flood often happens, because it lurks around for a long time, does the River Severn, it unearths some other damages. So that was her home at its worst. So she actually invested in a steel plan kitchen, and people say, oh, I don't want a stainless steel kitchen, they're horrible. I want that kitchen, it's gorgeous, it's absolutely beautiful. And she's done things like, she moved her bathroom upstairs, she kept a downstairs loo, but didn't put a vanity unit under the sink. She's got oak skirting boards, plastic, a lot of lightweight plastic stuff. She sited her telly up the wall, and make sure her boiler and everything was also sited up the wall. And her fireplace as well was built up to as high as the flood level had come, and she'd even got demountable flood resilient radiators. Here's some examples of what she'd done. A lot of people in rural communities have oil-fired central heating. She did, and her oil-fired plastic thingy was upended in the flood, so she had oil contamination as well as flooding, so she sited it up there for the next time. She had open plan staircases, and it was oak, so it's water resistant, and she had demountable bookcases. Luckily on the Severn we do have a good flood warning, but she empties them from the bottom upwards and takes them upstairs. Collapsible table and lightweight chaise longue that she can boot upstairs. I'm going to stop now because I'm sure you're all going to sleep, but thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you. Got questions, I can take a few, or just grab me over lunch, that's fine.
Over there, Mary. Yes? Would you like to ask a question? Do you have to stand up? And then we might hear you a bit clearer.
I think one of the things that's not been covered at all is looking forward to the future. The biggest problem is not what we can do, but stopping the planning authorities from granting permission to build.
Yes, well, you've actually, go to my website, and on my website, under information, there's a blow-by-blow guide on how to check the process and check that everything is done correctly. It was written by the author of Planning Policy Statement 25, which has now been not in process, but he's helped me write it. So all the things that you should be thinking about to take on the developers on my website, and I commend it to you because it's a really good document.